Hey guys, it's Herbert. Hope you're doing well. It's May here in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I am out. I'm working on my garden and enjoying my garden. But today I actually want to talk about a plant that is becoming of much more use. I'm learning more about the plant for my garden, and then it has some other interesting uses as well. So if you notice this tree here, you see these sprawling vines. They're coming up from the base here. They're climbing all the way up this walnut tree. And that is a plant known as kudzu. And kudzu is a very invasive vining plant that is, it's related to legumes and beans. And this stuff basically kind of spreads like almost like sweet potatoes. It has runners and it has these gigantic roots which can go as far as 8 feet deep into the ground, and then these runners just spread everywhere. They spread underground, they spread over the ground, they sprawl up the tree, and then they fall back down to make contact with other kudzu that's wanting to climb up. And then you have this very kind of like kind of jungle like look with all these kudzu vines. Now, two things that are very interesting about kudzu: they're nitrogen fixing. So like beans and things like that, they actually put nitrogen into the soil, which means that they actually are beneficial to the plants that can manage to coexist with them, because now there's nitrogen for those other plants to grow. So that's really good, because if you use this stuff for mulch, when it breaks down, excuse me, it's going to put a lot of nitrogen in your soil. It's a really good fertilizer. As it breaks down, it's going to feed that soil and those plants that you're trying to grow every year. So the other reason it's useful is because it has probably the deepest tap roots of any plant I know, or at least around here. And I would imagine that that's probably tapping into some deep earth soil where there's minerals and things that are being extracted that other plants can't get to, and then those nutrients come up into the plant. And so you're feeding the soil, so to speak, by leveraging what the plant can pull out of the deeper ground, and you're feeding that to your surface soil where your garden plants can flourish. The other reason this stuff is great is because it grows about a foot a day. So I'm already just picking these vines as they come up every day, and I'm slowly adding them to my mulch pile. This stuff kind of breaks down not as nearly as fast as straw, but if you let it sit for a year, it really begins to look like straw, like you would see in like a Ruth Stout type bed. So it's very good for any sort of no-till mulching or sheet mulching. You can definitely build your soil up this way, and it's a good mulch. It's a good cover to help at least a little bit with mitigate the weeds. And there's just so much biomass that comes from this plant because it grows so aggressively, so quickly. You could just harvest as much as you want every day, and within a couple of days there'll be a whole new amount of growth that you can pull out of here. It's really an amazing plant. If you have any sort of animals, particularly goats or cattle, it is a very good food source for them. I was watching another YouTube video, I forget the source, please forgive me, but they were talking about how there was a drought and a lot of the conventional crops that they were trying to feed their cattle were unavailable. And if you happen to be next to an area of kudzu is a very nutritious food source for the goats and sheep and cattle and things like that. So it's a great animal feed, and you'll never run out of it because it grows back so quickly. And then I'm trying to think what else. Oh, and if you really wanted to, I mean, I wouldn't even try to pick into this very dense clay soil, but if you wanted to, the kudzu makes these very large tubers that, I mean, some of them I think can get like over 100 pounds. But in Asia they call it, I believe it's called Japanese arrowroot, and it is a tuber that they cook and then they process into a flour, and it's a little different than the regular arrowroot, but you could do a lot of similar things. There's supposedly some medicinal uses, but it's a source of starch if you wanted to use the tuber. The leaves are tough. I wouldn't eat everything, the whole plant, except for I think the seed pods are edible, but they're not particularly yummy. They're better to feed to animals or to put in your garden. But it's a very interesting plant. It's a good starvation, it's good famine food, it's a good livestock food, and it's a great mulch slash fertilizer slash compost for your garden. And it's just so incredibly renewable. Nothing else that I've seen even compares to it. Surprisingly, even though it's very invasive, it seems to me that once you pull the vines and they're dead, they don't try to spread. They don't set seed or anything like that in your garden. I don't really pull it once the seed pods start coming out, because I don't want any of those to make it into the garden. But as far as making a pile of dead kudzu and letting it sit for a year and then using it the next year, this stuff has made a really awesome mulch. And so if you happen to be in an area where they have kudzu, rather than just treating it like a weed, you might want to consider some of these uses for it. So all right, thanks for joining me, guys, and catch you next time.